On WNIN Lawmakers this week, our guests are Evansville Mayor Lloyd Winnicky, as well as Indiana State Representative Ryan Hatfield. We'll also get an update from the Indiana General Assembly. That's all coming up next on WNIN. Welcome to WNIN Lawmakers. I'm John Gibson, news manager and local host of WNIN FM's Morning Edition. Before we check in with the Indiana General Assembly, let's talk with Evansville Mayor Lloyd Winnicky. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, John.
Well, great to have you here. Well, let's begin with something that's happening just down the street from us here. For a fifth year, the first ticket to the NCAA men's basketball tournament, and women's tournament for that matter, will be punched right here in Evansville. What are some of the positive changes that the Ohio Valley tournament has brought to the area as you see it?
Well, this is a great opportunity. As you said, it's the fifth consecutive year that Evansville's hosted this. This really started as a trial 5 years ago. We understood that the OVC was interested in sort of shopping the tournament outside of Nashville. Deputy Mayor Steve Schaefer, Jim Sangren from Old National Bank, and others made a trip to Nashville and made a pitch. And they gave us a one-year trial really well. We got another year, and then we entered into a 3-year agreement. So it's a really great partnership. It's a chance to profile the Ford Center. It's a chance to profile the city. It's a chance for our businesses, restaurants, shops, hotels to really flourish in a time where they really need it.
And as we all know, USI just recently joined the Ohio Valley Conference. So is that perhaps something that will help keep the tournament here?
We certainly hope so. We know we have a strong relationship. Commissioner Beth DeBusch says the host coming to Evansville is like coming home for the tournament. So we think that's a good sign. And we know with some of the departures from the conference, but the addition of USI, I think will one, help keep fans in the stands because we need people to come out and support really good quality basketball. But I think the university's decision to go to Division I is great. I love the fact that they're going to the Ohio Valley Conference, and I think it will only enhance the relationship between the city and the conference.
And while we're in the area of athletics, the new Aquatic Center here in Evansville has garnered some competitive events. What ones are confirmed, and what can you tell us about the future of the new Aquatic Center?
We've hosted a number of really large high school swim meets so far, and I will tell you that the reviews from the student athletes is really overwhelmingly positive. They're used to swimming in facilities that aren't this nice. When we opened the facility back in October, Lily King stood next to me and said, wow, there aren't many Division I programs that have a facility like this. Mm-hmm. The NCAA Division II National Swimming and Diving Championships are confirmed for 2025, and I'm confident that it will go well and we'll get even more as people understand just what a great facility it is.
Are you still in talks with other potential folks who would come to town?
The Evansville Sports Corporation, under the direction of Eric Marvin, is talking to other conferences, so I would not be surprised in the months ahead that we don't have an announcement or two regarding other conference championships.
All right, well, making a segue from that water to another water, and that is that the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission this past week approved water rate increases for local residents. Can you tell us why that increase is needed?
We've been talking about this for a while now. We've been studying the potential growth of, or the existing life in our existing water treatment plant. The existing water treatment plant opened in 1897. 1897. I think you need to kind of let that soak in to understand while we've added technology to the plant, it's not going to go another 20 years or 15 years. Mm-hmm. And so for the past 5 years, we've been studying what to do with water treatment going forward. So the decision was made to build a new water treatment facility. And so we proposed to the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission a 5-year rate structure beginning in July of this year. So rates won't go up until July. The day before that announcement from the IURC, we announced that we will be taking to City Council a request to use $4 million of our American Rescue Plan dollars to help those qualifying households who make $55,400 or less a year, and that equates to about 43,000 households. So a lot of people will be eligible. So essentially, we'll credit the amount equal to the rate increase for those qualifying customers for a period of up to 2 years. We'll use the rest of that money to allocate toward people who are even the hardest hit, people who are on shut-off notice, so they'll be able to be eligible for up to $250 per year to help pay off water and to keep their service going. So that's why we're doing it. It's complicated, and I would tell you the decision to move forward with a project of this magnitude is not easy. It was done after great deliberation, but I look at it this way. Our community needs a viable water and sewer utility to grow and to maintain. And we don't want to be in a position in 5 years or 10 years where we're in an emergency situation and we have to have a new plant. It takes time to build a new plant. It takes time to plan for a new plant, design it, and then construct it, probably a 4 or 5 year period. So we feel like we have to act now in order to maintain really good quality water service for decades to come.
There was an effort by some folks to perhaps reduce the size of this new plant, maybe reduce the cost a little bit. But the IURC went with the full-size plant that was proposed. Why not go with something a little smaller and less expensive?
Very easy answer, because we wouldn't have been able to grow. It would have really minimally increased our capacity. So why spend the amount of money to have the same capacity of water treatment? We have to have the ability to grow. We have wholesale customers outside the city of Evansville. We serve Toyota as an example. You know, they continue, thank goodness, to make large investments in our community. If we have a smaller plant, we're saying, hey, this is as big as we can be. We can't service new customers, or we can't grow. So we're happy that it's the size that it is, and candidly, a smaller facility would have been, you know, a penny or 2 or 3 less per month. But it would not have significantly reduced the proposed rate structure that we had laid out to the state.
You alluded to this. The utility board approved measures that you proposed that will, cut down on or put a hold on sewer bills, as I understand it. Now, how much can and will that help?
So we've not. Let's a little history here. So back in 2011, the city entered into a consent decree with the U.S. EPA and Department of Justice to reduce the number of combined sewer overflows in a year. In 2015, we were able to modify that, and then in 2018, we started to see the first several projects in the consent decree coming in extremely high price-wise, way over engineers' original estimates. So at that point, we re-engaged discussions with our partner agencies, EPA and IDEM and the Department of Justice, saying we need some flexibility based on affordability. That very first meeting happened in January of 2018, and just recently we reached agreement on a modification. So then the pandemic started in March of 2020, and so we told those agencies that we were going to temporarily pause construction of some large projects. They gave us the tentative approval to do that, so we did not increase sewer rates in 2021 or 2022.
Right.
We announced this week that we will also not raise sewer rates in 2023. So that's that. The EPA also asked us to officially agree to a 3-year period, a 3-year pause, if you will, of the decree. So that 3-year pause would take effect beginning once it's approved by upper management of those agencies and a federal judge. What that means is 4 large projects that would significantly drive rates are being delayed for a period of time. During this 3-year period, we'll renegotiate the terms of the original or the modified consent decree to hopefully come up with a more palatable schedule of project implementation and hopefully more manageable sewer rates. But sort of the headline, I guess, if you will, is that we'll have 3 consecutive years of no sewer rate increases.
Yeah, so a 3-year pause essentially, but at the same time there'll be a pause in the projects, correct?
On those projects, but there are projects that we have to do that are outside of the consent decree just to keep the sewer infrastructure working. Again, we have an old underground system.
Right.
And there are improvements that we have to make that aren't even required by the federal government. So I suspect in 2024 there will probably be a rate increase. I couldn't tell you what. And if we can delay it even further, we'll certainly do that. But for the immediate future, this will have 3 consecutive years of no sewer rate increases.
And in terms of utility rate increases, unfortunately, a lot of folks are pointing to their CenterPoint bills for rising utility costs in the area. Now, can you talk about that? And is there anything the city can do to maybe get CenterPoint to change their fee structure or do something that would lower these rates that have been skyrocketing?
Listen, I pay the same kind of utility bills everyone else does. My bill's gone up like yours and everyone else's. It's frustrating. No one likes to see it. We have been, I would say, inundated with complaints about CenterPoint bills. We have passed along our concerns to the local leadership of CenterPoint about the rates and the tenor of the complaints, and we've done that. I'm not sure that they have the ability just to willy-nilly change their rates based on the complaints that we've forwarded to them. But your viewers need to know we have communicated what we're hearing. The city has no legal authority to go in and change their rates. What we have the ability to do is affect water and sewer rates. And as we've just discussed, we've spent a lot of time in the last many months and many years trying to keep our water and sewer rates that we control as manageable as possible. That's where we've kept a lot of our focus.
Now, is there any way the city can pressure the IURC, apply some heat there, perhaps for the state to take some action on the CenterPoint bills? That is the agency that does have the jurisdiction, right?
Yeah, so we can certainly, and happy to forward the complaints that we received onto the IURC, and it's certainly up to that agency to decide whether or not to take further action.
Well, let's talk about another issue here, sort of pandemic related. Evansville Regional Airport has announced this past week or two that they no longer have flights going to Chicago and Detroit, at least for now. Can you tell us what led to this decision and what it'll take to get those flights to resume?
Yeah, this is happening in regional airports like Evansville's across the country. The big issue, as I understand it, is the fact that there's a massive pilot shortage among the major carriers. So those major carriers, in order to keep as many routes going as possible, are rating regional carriers for their pilots. So consequently, communities like Evansville will see a reduction in service for a period of time. And I don't know how long that will last, but certainly we have communicated to the airlines directly and to organizations that can influence the airlines' decisions that we need to resume these air routes as quickly as possible. I will tell you this, that we're not immune from it, or large cities aren't immune from it either. Right. Chicago, as an example, American, in the month of April had 1,600 flights per month going in and out of there, and they reduced it by 600. So airports across the country are facing it, but especially more regional-oriented cities like ours.
Yes. Well, Mr. Mayor, we have just about a minute left. Sure. Anything else you'd like to add? Perhaps something you'd like to tease about your upcoming State of the City address?
We still have to write it.
I see.
They don't write themselves, and it's like the dreaded high school term paper or college term paper. You think, oh, I'll get to it. We're excited to share the opportunities that lie before us. We'll celebrate some of our past, and we're trying to figure out if we can break a little news that day, but more to come. That speech is the 29th of the month.
Yes, indeed, coming up in just a few weeks.
Right.
Evansville Mayor Lloyd Winnicky, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Please come back anytime. And now let's go to Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith. He has this report on the week at the State House.
Lawmakers in the Senate effectively killed a controversial school curriculum and parent oversight measure this week. House Bill 1134 went through several changes in the Senate as lawmakers attempted to address concerns plaguing the bill as it moved through the State House. But ultimately, the measure's author did not bring it forward, and Senate President Pro Tem Roderick Bray said his caucus couldn't agree on the legislation. House and Senate Republicans revived a bill in conference committee that would eliminate Indiana's license requirement to carry a handgun in public. A Senate committee had voted the previous week to keep the permit system, but Republicans opted to ignore that and advance the original language in a different bill. And the House sent a far less restrictive version of their COVID-19 vaccine employer mandate legislation to the governor Thursday, who then signed it into law. It largely maintains the status quo for businesses, particularly when it comes to considering employees' religious exemption requests. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
Joining us now is Indiana State Representative Ryan Hatfield, who represents many portions of Evansville. Representative Hatfield, good to have you back again.
Glad to be back.
Well, thank you. Well, we're getting down to the home stretch of this General Assembly session. Now, just this past week, Governor Holcomb officially ended Indiana's COVID-19 public health emergency. Of course, it's been in place since March of 2020. What are your thoughts on that decision?
So he ended the emergency order through House Bill 1001, which passed the House and was signed by the governor this week. And we believe, House Democrats believe that House Bill 1001, after the Senate took out all the most offensive parts of it, by and large just repeats federal law. And so we're not really sure that we needed House Bill 1001, but we were supportive of House Bill 1001 because the governor, as well as governors all over the country, are saying it's time to come away from our emergency orders and to get back to life as normal. We think that's a good thing. We have to stay vigilant, and as people are still getting sick, but I think we really have flattened the curve, and we are in the home stretch, hopefully, in getting back to normal and taking every precaution that needs to be taken, but making sure that we get back to normal.
Yes, infections, hospitalizations have all been going down lately, so did that make it an easier decision to go along with?
Oh, there's no doubt about it that had we been in the throes of another spike or a problem, that Democrats would have been pushing for more emergency powers, more ability for the governor to extend this particular emergency. That being said, the governor felt comfortable that now is the time. We've seen other states say that now is the time. And so we were supportive of House Bill 1001, kind of with the big caveat that we believe it's already in federal law and that there wasn't a whole lot to it. The initial provisions in House Bill 1001 we voted against. We believed that at that time, though they were unnecessary, punitive, and were not going to be helpful to us coming out of the pandemic, we now believe House Bill 1001 has been watered down to the extent that it's essentially federal law.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the economy. A very good jobs report just came out at the federal level this past week. Last week, you spoke with other Democratic officials at a jobs tour here in Evansville. Can you tell us what that was all about? What was the purpose there?
You know, Indiana Democrats are making sure to remind Hoosier voters that Indiana was really in an uncertain place before the pandemic. And thanks to the federal government, thanks to President Biden's American Rescue Plan and the federal efforts that have been undertaken over the last 2 years, Indiana is doing quite well economically. Unemployment rate is low, job hirings are up, folks that were leaving their jobs are finding other jobs for better pay. All that's positive and was long overdue. And the Biden administration has really been at the crux of those changes in Indiana. And, you know, we wanted to make sure every once in a while it's time to remind folks that Joe Biden and Democrats out in D.C. actually got a few things done to the great benefit of our state.
Now, you mentioned at the tour, I wasn't there personally, but I understand you mentioned that there are projects coming up. Can you elaborate on that? Any of these projects you can specify for us?
Well, certainly the funding will be helpful with the completion of the I-69 bridge. We believe that the federal funding will ensure that the READY grants that the state provides are funded. And so that federal funding paid for the entire READY grant process. $50 million of that is coming back to Evansville to ensure that we're able to do the projects that Mayor Winnicky and the town of Newburgh and Posey County, that we all come together and make sure that those projects are community-based and regionally based. And one of the things that I really appreciate about EREP and the mayor is that they've been regionally focused to make sure that we're doing everything we need to do, not just within the city of Evansville, but in the region, to ensure that we're attracting talent. It's all about attracting talent. These quality of life projects lead to attracting talent. They were paid for by President Biden and Democrats in D.C.
And just to clarify, the EREP, that group is that stands for
the Evansville Regional Economic Partnership.
Yes.
That's right,
Yes,
a locally focused group that makes sure that those projects get off the ground.
Yeah. All right, well, back to the State House now. House and Senate Republicans are moving forward with a bill that would remove the Indiana license requirement to carry a handgun in public. I believe it died, and now it's come back to life, as these things sometimes do at the General Assembly. What are your thoughts on the bill? Do you think a person should be required to have a gun, should have to have a license to carry a gun in public?
Well, let me tell you about the process first. So the process that brought this language back after having been defeated or died in the Senate is what's called conference committee. Conference committee is a process where language that has passed either chamber can be put into any bill that is put into conference committee. 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans sit down and provide a final product for both chambers to vote on. Here's the kicker. If 2 Democrats don't agree with the 2 Republicans, they can be removed from the conference committee, making it 4 Republicans to decide the final makeup of the bill. That's how the gun language got added into a final product of a bill. The gun language is concerning to me because what the police are telling us, the FOP, the Sheriff's Association, the police chiefs, and the superintendent of the Indiana State Police picked by Governor Eric Holcomb are all telling us it'll lead to more police officer deaths. That police officers will die if we pass the language as it's written in that bill. And so, I am interested to see the final product. I've not seen the final language yet. I'll continue to watch it, but so far it's very concerning because the police officers that I know, that I work with, and the folks that are active in the legislation at the State House are telling us that it'll lead to police officer deaths.
All right, we will keep an eye on that as we move through these final days of the session. Let's move on to House Bill 1130. That's the one that says school boards must allow the public to comment during public school board meetings. That bill is headed to the governor's desk now. The EVSC does allow comments. I think it's always on their agenda. This bill was authored by Evansville Representative Tim O'Brien. What do you think of that bill? Do we need something in state law that says school boards must provide public comment?
Generally I'm supportive of allowing school boards to decide what's best for their community, but I thought this was a reasonable effort. I was supportive of it in the House, and I believe it's a reasonable effort to ensure that the public have input on their elected bodies. School boards are elected in this state, and I believe that they should remain elected in this county. They're nonpartisan elections. I believe that's important. And I also believe that it's important that when you elect officials to run school systems, some as large as the EVSC, which is a fairly large system in the state, that you should have input, that those folks are elected by you to do a job for the public good, and that you should have public input into their meetings. We have that at the state legislature. I thought it was a good idea to have it at school boards as well.
And of course, this legislation started out with other elements, right? The idea that a teacher would have to post all of their class curriculum online and changes when they happen. That was all removed, correct?
That's right, and I believe that those are 2 separate bills.
Okay.
We voted on that in 2 separate bills. So there was the one bill about school boards and public comment. There was another bill that I opposed that had to do with it was inspired by CRT concerns,
right,
and was had to do with what teachers had to do in posting their curriculum, updating parents online about what happened in the discussions, and was burdensome to teachers. We've got some of the best teachers in the country, and we need to respect them as such. And that bill was overburdensome, to say the least.
Is it still alive?
The bill is dead. The language, we have to be vigilant because the language can always come back in conference committee. Sounds like we're getting to the end. I'm hopeful that the session will end without that language. But it looks, every day that goes by is a win for teachers at this point.
Yeah. We continue to see a surge of fentanyl overdoses, many deaths in our area and across the state. Any approach or any new approach to try and lower those numbers and have a real effect against that epidemic?
You know, there's been a recent settlement with some of the opioid producers, some of the pharmaceutical companies that were producing these opioids that ended up in so many of the drugs that are killing people. That money, we've passed legislation to ensure that some of that money go to rehabilitation and getting folks back on their feet once addicted. We need to do more. I believe that we need to do more in the shape of rehabilitation, treatment, and mental health. And we can do those projects thanks to the American Rescue Plan and the funding from the federal government and the funding from President Biden's efforts to ensure states have the money they need to do these projects. And as I mentioned, we have a great process down here led by the mayor and EREP and a lot of good local folks saying we need these projects. I'm hopeful that $50 million in part will be spent on mental health and drug addiction treatment facilities here locally in Evansville to ensure that the people that get a hold of those opioids, that get addicted to opioids, are able to find treatment.
We only have about a minute left. Anything else you'd like to add or anything you'd like to see in these closing days of the legislature?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts in the final days. I will be watching closely a tax bill that may have some tax cuts in it to ensure that we're not bankrupting our local municipalities. I believe the mayor opposed those in the first round. We'll see what it comes back like. But there's a lot of moving parts, you got to pay attention closely in these final days, but we'll see. It's going to come down to it.
We will be watching. That's State Representative Ryan Hatfield. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, and thanks to all of our guests this week. Next week, our scheduled guest on WNIN Lawmakers are Indiana State Senator Vanita Becker and Indiana State Representative Wendy McNamara. I'm John Gibson of WNIN FM. Thank you for joining us for WNIN Lawmakers.